Ryan, good to see you on. Good morning.
Michael, good morning.
I am excited to get this thing kicked off as we dive in and talk about some e-commerce platforms, especially when it comes to this guns and ammo space. We'll be doing quick introductions here in a minute, but what I want to do first is to set the stage for what we're going to be talking about. And so there's some concerns that in my conversations, and it sounds like with some of your conversations that you have on a regular basis, that people bring up when it comes to talking about their e-commerce platform. So how about we start there and we'll just move right in.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, I'm constantly having conversations with my clients in the space. I primarily work in 2A, so I do a little bit of high risk overall, which I think is important to mention here. It's the 2A space and high risk, whatever you want to call
Mhm.
that, right? When the banks consider something high risk, there's a lot of
Absolutely.
overlap in those things. And so whether it's getting deplatformed, the horrible SEO, the inability
Mhm.
to be able to really use any of the social media platforms or marketing as a whole, it's just all very difficult in this space.
That's
So
right.
be
That's right.
great to just let people know.
Yeah, maybe we can quickly talk about the getting deplatformed subject. I know that is a legitimate concern for real reasons, and uh, it's a problem. I mean, getting a 3-day notice, a week notice, I mean, even a month notice is all crazy because it takes way longer than that usually to move a website around unless there's some type of Herculean effort. What do you think about this concern, given that this 2A industry is kind of subject to the technologies that technocrats, if I can call them that, that don't necessarily like the Second Amendment and the whole space surrounding that, kind of control this technology. So, what are your thoughts? I mean, that's a real concern, right?
Yeah, I think it's the most real concern.
Hmm.
And it doesn't go for just platforms. So it's not just, I'll call it out, right? It's not just the, oh my God, Shopify might deplatform me. It's
Hmm.
also, what if my bank decides that they don't want to take my transactions
That's true.
anymore? What if my
That is true.
shipper decides they don't want to let me print labels anymore?
Mhm.
And so it's a critical component in the space. But I think the main one everybody's talking about when we have this conversation is physical platforms. And like you
Right.
mentioned, you know, even with a Herculean effort behind you, if you're a large store that has complex offerings, which the
Hmm.
firearm space does, you're going to need to fire up an FFL. You're going to need to fire up all these other things that are part of that store.
That's
And
right.
unfortunately, a 3-day notice is nothing. And a 30-day notice, does it even matter when we're talking about notices? Does that even matter because of the fact that the cost associated with it? Like, let's
Oh
be
yeah.
real there. It's you're going to spend a couple $100,000 moving to a new platform if you're
Hmm.
subject to any kind of deplatforming. And it's just it, like I said, I think it's the most real concern that exists in the space right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation is to talk through some of that stuff. But then beyond that, we have things like this poor search engine optimization. I mean, what good does it do if you have a store out there, but nobody knows how to find you? Nobody can find you. I mean, that is a real problem as well. Security concerns. I think this is one of the underappreciated concerns in this space, especially on some platforms we're going to be talking about later here today. People they're buying guns, and in a era where security is kind of important, under basically, if somebody was to crack your store and get a list of all the gun owners that have purchased from you, getting that list in the wrong hands is not good. Like, not good. And I don't think security is appreciated as much as, to be frank, it should be.
Yeah, and I can tell you the other thing to the other side of that coin, right?
Mhm.
Is yes, as a merchant, as a store owner, you need to be concerned with those sorts of things. But I think we all know in the space that the purchasers are very concerned about security.
Absolutely.
You might have Bob who wants to buy a gun because he thinks that he needs to protect his family and he has the capability because he lives in a free state. And so that's great. But there's also that other side of the coin in the firearms industry. And there are people who don't want to ever use their credit card for a
Mm-hmm.
purchase of a bullet, those sorts of things. And so being able to guarantee the security of your clients, your customers, is something that I think goes a really long way, specifically in this space.
Absolutely. We should talk about Bitcoin some other time, but we won't talk about that now.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
100%.
And there's other things like the content battle, even just website instabilities and legal compliance. These are all real world concerns, and we're going to be addressing them here in the conversations today as far as finding a platform that addresses these concerns. So, with that, our goal here in this conversation is to identify the platform for you in this massive e-commerce playing field. There's so many platforms. It's confusing. It's difficult to understand. And our goal is to distill that into some information that makes it easy to make a decision here going forward, which means that we're going to be answering the problems we talked about just a couple of minutes ago. We're going to help you identify a platform to get the most features. And of course, all for the least cost. Who wants to just donate money? And then finally, at the end, stick around because we have a special analysis here at the end. And we're going to do that in 4 different segments. We're going to introduce ourselves. I want to get Ryan's introduction out there, especially. We're going to talk about your 3-year plan and how that actually makes a difference here. We're going to talk about the different options as far as from a global perspective. And then we're going to dive into specific recommendations that you will be able to take very actionable insights away from. So with that, Ryan, take it away. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, Ryan Stout. I've been working in this space now for, I guess about 6 or so years. I actually worked for BigCommerce, one of the platforms that we'll be talking about today. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the name in the space because they are a two-way friendly SaaS platform. And what I realized with working for that platform is that they are a very good platform for a very specific subset of customers. And I left BigCommerce because I didn't want to be able to serve just that small bit of the firearms community. I wanted to be able to serve the entire community as a whole. So whether you're good for Shopify, whether you need Magento, et cetera, and we're going to get into all that later, but I wanted to be able to really serve, again, like I said, the whole industry. So I left, I formed my own consultancy, and now I work for companies across the board in the firearm space, being able to assist them with looking at their current technology stacks and their goal sets for the future, and then making changes as necessary to those stacks in order to achieve those goals.
Absolutely. One real quick thing, Ryan, I understand you have your own e-commerce store. Is that correct?
I've got a couple. Yeah.
I think that's important to bring into the conversation here because from my perspective in the conversations that I have, it's easy to the term consultant, not saying anything bad here, but can almost have like a negative thing like, oh, you did some other line of work and now you're a consultant. No, you've actually walked the walk. And so you're what I would say a very qualified consultant because you're actually consulting on what you have done and what you are doing. You've been very deeply into the space. You worked at BigCommerce. You're in this space. So I don't know if you can just take a real quick second to share just a thing or two about your e-commerce journey.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. I actually have a few different stores. Like I said, I was a firefighter in a previous life, and I invented a device called ladder lights. It's just a safety device that can go on the ladders. That's the biggest store I have, but that store has been really unique in its needs because I sell into the government. And so being able to take very specific credit cards and process things in a very specific way, it's not even a B2B transaction, it's a B2G transaction. And so being able to build a website that has the capacity to do all those things in a really automated fashion has been definitely a journey. So between that and selling firearms and firearms related parts, I've kind of hit the gamut across all of e-commerce, from selling automotive parts when I owned a shop to the firefighter stuff that I've got patents for, and then of course the gun industry. So it's been like you say, I like the language you use. It's been a journey.
Yes.
It's been a learning journey, and I just want to share the knowledge that I have with other folks that maybe are just beginning that journey, and I don't want them to have to walk the journey with blistered feet. I want to be able to go ahead and give them the insight to make a few jumps ahead and just get straight to it.
I love that, Ryan. That's fantastic. Yeah. That's very good. Thank you for sharing. I think most of those who are probably watching already know me, but I'll do a quick overview. My name is Joseph. Actually, here in Kansas City, we just got a fairly rare snow event, so my kids are pretty stoked about that. Like 10 inches. I know for some of you that are probably watching, 10 inches is like a dusting compared to what you're used to, but at least it's significant for us. So it's been a good time. I come from the more on the technology side, so I've been writing software, writing code for about 20 years now. And I don't look that old. I started when I was stupid young, didn't do great work at the beginning, but it's like it's been a journey as well. And one of the big aspects of what we've done, and it really helped shape my picture of e-commerce in general, is we've actually done a lot of training and actually sold a lot of that training online through our own e-commerce store. So while it is digital, it doesn't have the fulfillment aspects of it. There's still all the same aspects, such as customer service and the delivery and the automation and the development of these products. All that kind of comes together, therefore, on the e-commerce side for us. And it's been an amazing journey. Absolutely loved it. We've been uh, exhibiting at SHOT Show since 2021. Looking forward to being here this year, as I know Ryan will be as well. And it'll be fantastic, and looking forward to meeting those of you who are hopefully watching this, being able to hopefully attend SHOT Show. So really excited about that. Very good. Let's talk about the who this is for. And I know we say this is the guns and ammo space, but I also recognize within what seems like a somewhat small, narrow niche, well, until you go to SHOT Show and meet all 55,000 other compatriots there, there's still is a lot of segmentation in this. Ryan, I don't know if you can quickly talk through some of the differences between these aspects of this vertical.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch, right? We've got everybody from Joe's gun store down the street, local guy wants to sell some guns, and he's going to be tapped into Sports South and Lipsy's and all the other distributors to be pulling inventory and pushing it out. That's the guy that we were talking about earlier when we mentioned SEO. That store, nobody's going to know about it. It doesn't matter what integrations you have. It doesn't matter what's going on. If you don't have the capacity to put a billboard up in e-commerce terms, SEO, right? Put up a billboard and a big sign outside. Nobody's going to know to walk into the store. But we go all the way down that to the retailers that are just selling, like I say, the local guys to multiple stores. We've got a few of those. I happen to be in Austin, Texas at the moment. We've got a few of those where they might have 5 or 6 stores across a regional area. And now you're getting the complexities increasing. You need to be able to do not only integrations with those Lipsy's and Sports South, but now you need to be able to have multi-location inventory. So you need to know, does the store on Lamar have the same thing that the store out north has, the same one over by Belton, Texas, a city right up the street? I obviously had this conversation with somebody earlier, so it's a little fresh in my mind. But then you've got the guys that are actually manufacturing. And another, Staccato, I've got them on my head right now. Those guys are manufacturing firearms, they're manufacturing ammunition, and they've got a very similar situation, right? You've got with them, and I think I can speak to this at least a little bit without getting in too much trouble, but with those guys, you've got another level of complexity. It's Staccato. Everybody knows the Staccato name. And if I buy my gun, it's special order. So that means it's going to take 6 months for me to get it. And I'm elaborating here a little bit, but it's going to take some time for me to get it. But man, I want my swag today. And so now we're talking about split shipments. And so there's a new level of complexity. So every single one of these bullets we have up has a different type of complex need within not just firearms, but within e-commerce. There's a lot of people that need split shipments. That's not something
that's right
to the firearms community. It's just an e-commerce problem. And that's where, you guys come in and be able to build a store that has the capacity to automate a lot of these things with the right technologies in the background. But as we get on in today's talk, we'll talk a little bit more about what those technologies are. But man, there are so many different types of firearms related e-commerce stores out there. And, they all have very unique needs.
Absolutely. Which I think just goes to show that one size does not fit all ever in any part of the e-commerce conversation. But I think it's demonstrably even more important here in this space that there's There's so many nuances, and that's where the conversation needs to be had. I'm a huge proponent of the 80-20 rule. And my goal here in this conversation, as we continue to dive into this deeper, is we're going to get you 80% of the way there to making a decision and understanding your options. But there's that last 20% that ultimately can take 80% of the time, where there's a lot more conversation that should be had, just because you come away from this saying, this is the one. It most likely is the one, but there needs to be should be some extra conversation, some extra research, just to make sure this is the perfect one for you, just because we only have an hour here, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff, get really deep into the weeds here. But I always like to put that caveat out there. I'm a huge 80-20 proponent, and we're going to get you 80% of the way there, at least. Hopefully it's closer in the 90s. But we're really excited to dive in here. And let's start by talking about this 3-year plan, because this is going to have everything to do with what e-commerce platform you really need. If you're needing if you need a Honda Civic, but you decide to splurge on a Ferrari, that might be fine if you can afford the payments for that. But if you can't afford the payments, that Ferrari does you no good whatsoever. And so it might be cool, might be sexy, but at the end of the day, a Honda Civic might be perfectly what you need and allow you to live your best life, your best social life. And so, Ryan, walk me through we've segmented into these 2 different categories of local sales for this 3-year plan versus national sales. How do you see these 2 working together and ultimately making having an influence on the platform decision?
Yeah, sure. I like the analogy you make with the Civic and the Ferrari. I always like to say, if Glock doesn't just make the Glock 19, and there's a reason that Glock doesn't just make the Glock 19.
That's right.
Because
that's right.
Everybody needs a different caliber. We can have the caliber conversation, or we can have the Glock conversation, right? And every once in a while, you got to step your game up and go to a Shadow Systems from a Glock. So
that's right.
Local sales, I think, is one of those. The firearms industry as a whole doesn't have huge margins. So we've got to be really careful about where we spend our money. And spending money on an e-commerce store can be daunting, especially when we're talking about these stores, the local smaller stores whose main revenue source is going to be somebody walking in the door who wants to put a gun in their hand, fill out the paperwork, and walk out in the same day. Depends on which state you're in, but being in Texas, walk out the same day. So sure, e-commerce is definitely a supplement. This is something that these guys are going to fire up a store, and they're going to have their local inventory within that store, and then they're going to have an integration to Sports South or whomever it may be. Mm-hmm. And these are the guys that you really need to focus on the SEO and those things if you want to grow to that next level. But from a local sales perspective, it's pretty much, what do you got in the store? How do you get that uploaded into your store? I want to be careful about my language here, but the local sales gun stores typically don't have a really high technical acumen, and that's not being mean in any measurable way. For e-commerce stores, even the easy ones, the Shopifys and the Big Commerces of the world, they make it easy, but you still have to have that technical acumen. And for most of these folks that are running these smaller stores, their technical acumen is in running a business, and that means knowing how their taxes are working and their following all the right laws and regulations and filing all the paperwork. That is where they succeed well, and that's why they have a successful.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's well stated. And the other thing I want to call out there is it's easy for everyone to have the vision of what we're going to talk about next being national sales, being like a juggernaut in this larger retail conversation. But and circling back to what you said earlier, it takes a lot of investment, and there is no shame, no harm, nothing bad with saying, look, we're going to be the juggernaut here of this area here, Kansas City, Austin, whatever. Like that's going to be our focus, and we're just going to knock it out of the park, as opposed to having the sexy grand ideas of, we're going to be this national, massive national retailer, which is great. It's just that it can unfortunately, I think, cause some confusion as far as, okay, are we going to become national? But then what happens with the local side of it, and in that can be cause some challenges.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once you take that next step, it becomes significant. And that's where
Absolutely.
having a really good developer matters quite a bit, because
Mhm.
I think the SEO, we mentioned, we were going to say SEO a million times in this conversation, right? Because it
We will.
just
Oh yeah.
matters so much. It matters so much. And I think even the people who do have the technical acumen to be able to build a banner or change their
Mhm.
website colors, yesterday was the 6th, maybe throw some American flags up, those sorts of things. That's really easy to do on a SaaS platform. But when you're actually writing the copy for the physical
Mhm.
firearms, whatever it is that you're selling, that also has to be written in a very specific way in order for Google to recognize it and then make sure that you're appearing, however you need to appear. And those are the things that most people in this space at the smaller level aren't going to have. But as you start
Mhm.
migrating over to national sales and that revenue band increases a little, you can do one of a couple of things. And that's either bring somebody in internally that can help get
Mhm.
everything done, or get a retainer with a developer that knows what they're doing and just utilize them as your resource to ensure that your site is
That's right.
appearing the way it should.
Absolutely. Well stated. Well stated. And I think it comes back to the strategy and taking that 3-year look into the future and saying, what will I see as success here in 3 years? Where do I want to be with that? And that's going to be a significant driver to what we're going to talk about here in the next few minutes, as far as whether it's going to be local sales or national sales. We're going to talk through the options that are going to be ideal for each one of these scenarios. So, with that said, how about we jump into this larger umbrella conversation of what are these buckets of options that are available, and we will dive in to be a little bit more specific. So, uh,
Cool.
Ryan, why don't you give a really brief overview as far as how these three fit together? And we're obviously going to dive in a little bit deeper on each one, but just kind of an overview here.
Sure. I think on the far left, I think when we're looking at the gun specific e-commerce platforms, we're really
Mhm.
looking at something that gives us everything we need in one box. And that makes things very
Which is
simple.
huge.
Huge,
Yeah.
right? Being able to click a single button and pull in an FFL or pull in your
Mhm.
whichever integrations you have. Again, I'm going to use Lipsies and Sports South because they're big names that everybody
Mhm.
kind of knows. But being able to use any of those on the left are going to give you those capabilities to integrate very quickly with the
Mhm.
appropriate technologies that you're going to need in order to fire up a store, whether
That's
that's
right.
starting a store from scratch, or you've already got a store and you're trying to make that next step.
Mhm.
And we obviously we'll get into it a little bit more in depth, but there's some really cool technologies that are being put forward on some of these, and we'll dive more into that. But then as we jump over to SaaS, which I think is where you and I agree, most of the, we'll call them enterprise level merchants, are going to be, right. You're
Mhm.
actually selling firearms beyond just manufacturing one thing. So
That's
there's the
right.
manufacturers and then there's the retailers. And an enterprise retailer is going to need something like a BigCommerce or Shopify.
Mhm.
We talked about Shopify earlier, and we'll continue to talk about them as SaaS. But when we're looking at these guys, they have all of the capabilities that you will need to grow that business beyond just local sales.
That's right.
And I kind of mentioned it earlier, right? We talked about the multi-location inventory. We talked about
Mhm.
split shipments. We talked about all those sorts of things. So if you're running an enterprise resource planning system, whatever ERP it may be, being able to connect that ERP into your store is critical. And I'm not saying that the platforms on the left there under gun specific cannot do that. But really, as you start to grow in the business complexity, you need to
Mhm.
move up to something that's more aligned with SaaS. And then
Yep.
on the right, we've got the full open source, right? And I know that there's a large part of the audience today is probably either
Mhm.
on WooCommerce or has looked at WooCommerce, because it's free. They can't kick me off, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right.
You're kind of
Well,
right. You're kind of right to a degree, but at the same token, it is against the terms and conditions of WooCommerce to sell firearms, blades, ammunition, et cetera. So you're playing with fire, And again, you can't get kicked off, but they can start reducing the apps and aftermarket accessory technologies that you're allowed to use. And that hinders your ability to grow. So free is free for a reason. And then, of course, there's the Magentos. And I think Magento is right if you're Glock or if you're Smith and Wesson or something along those lines. And
Yeah.
that's going to be the top 10 big companies, right? Beretta, something like that. But I think for the conversation we're having today, almost everybody is going to fit right in that gun specific or SaaS category. Do you agree there?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good way to summarize it. And we'll be looking at it a little bit further here as we go forward. But again, you'll think I'm beating a dead horse here, but I think security it needs to be a very critical filter that we look at these different platforms through, especially on the open source side, because that liability is more or less completely transferred to you versus with some of the other platforms, the ones that Ryan talked about, the gun specific and the SaaS, software as a service. Both of those, the platform provider takes on some or maybe a lot of the liability there, which again is not something we like to think about now, but we sure wish we would have thought about that if we run into a difficult situation such as a breach. So let's jump in. Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you again, and why don't you talk through some of these gun specific platforms, some of the pros and cons, and kind of how they fit together and the needs that they solve.
Sure. Yeah, I think the one key thing that we need to look at here is that these platforms are coming to you with the intention of selling firearms from the get-go, obviously gun specific. So being able to do the appropriate forms via the website is a key component, both on the front end and on the back end. So me, a purchaser of a firearm, I need to fill out my e-forms. And then on the back end, as the owner of the store, you have your own paperwork that you need to file, your bound book and all of those things. All that's going to come as part of it. You're getting a payment processor that is 2A friendly. You know that your FFL is all going to be included, so you don't have to go buy an app that you would need to do on the SaaS side of things. So from an ease of use perspective, these are really cool. I think it goes a step further. And I know that I said if you're an enterprise customer, you probably need to go to the SaaS side of things. But I think that there's a lot that could be had here as well, as long as you don't have really complex business needs beyond the capacity of the platform. And Coreware is a really good example. Coreware has some really unique technology right now where if you subscribe to the Coreware platform and you start your store, not only do you get the integrations with Lipsy's and Sports South and all the distributors, but you also become part of a network. And I know that it's the same for a few of these, but you're now part of a network of retailers who are utilizing the same ecosystem all the way up to and including, SIG is a good example. So if you need the ability to share inventories and work through this network of sometimes smaller stores, there's a really high value that you can get out of that, again, as long as your needs aren't super complex. And we can talk about what needs make you complex and which ones don't for hours. That's a whole other webinar, right? So by all means, you have our information. If you feel like you fit in this category of, man, maybe this is right for me, by all means, follow up with us. We're happy to have a conversation deeper specific to your business needs, because as we've mentioned already here today, everybody's got something unique, and it's a matter of really analyzing what it is that you're trying to do, looking at that 3-year plan, and then making the right recommendations. But there are some really cool capabilities and the ease of access to these gun specific sites.
And the other thing to call out is, for the most part, they're reasonably inexpensive to incredibly inexpensive. Like the value you get for this, if you need this feature set, it's palpable value. Like it's really incredible. And so there again, I want to reemphasize that if your 3-year goal is local, this might be a really good solution. Now, there's, again, some nuance here that might end up pushing you outside of this scope, but uh, out of just as the availability to offer e-commerce to local or regional customers, it's hard to beat the value that comes with a package like this.
It really is, and you have compliance there, right? And we all know what a big deal compliance is. Now, that
That's
being
right.
said, I do want to point out that I don't want to speak for all of these, but I know most of these compliance is going to be an additional cost. Just keep that in mind. But
Mhm.
as you're starting to go from that local gun store, yeah, it's pretty easy to know what my laws are here in Travis County. But if I want to expand beyond the state lines and start selling to New Mexico and Arkansas and Colorado and Louisiana, my surrounding states, I don't know what the laws are there. And
That's right.
I need to either hire an attorney to tell me what to do, hire, somebody to sit in the back room and constantly know the law, or I can go into a tool that automatically does my compliance for me. And
Mhm.
having compliance as part of the platform is another really nice thing, because as you migrate up to SaaS, here we go again with, now you've got higher rates on your charges because they know
Mhm.
they can. Let's be real. That's the only reason they're charging more, because they know they can.
Yeah.
Your compliance is going to be an app. Your FFL is going to be an app. Your 4473s are going to be an app. Your bound book integrations are going to be an app. So you start getting apped to death a bit, but that's, with additional business complexity comes additional e-commerce complexity. That's just kind of the way it goes.
Absolutely. Good points there, Ryan. Thank you. Let's talk about software as a service. And this would be usually a better fit on the national scale. Again, we're going to be diving into each one of these specific options here even deeper, but uh, there's some benefits on the SaaS side. So with the gun specific, those are pretty much proprietary, meaning it's their systems. They build it, they maintain it. If you want to make some changes to your website, it's going to be going through them. Versus software as a service is going to unlock that. So it's basically your tool that you own, or lease is a better term, and you can then delegate the development of that, the management of that, to whomever you want, right? These systems are open source in the way that there's documentation and there's the ability for a developer to get in there and customize it, or you can install new themes, you can install apps, you can create custom apps. It basically unlocks the entire experience. In fact, you can literally create your own experience on top of this stuff. Not that you'd ever want to do that, but like the amount of flexibility that you have is incredible. You can do it out of the box, and it's incredibly easy to do that, or you can take it all the way up the scale and do something completely custom, which very few people do that, but it is an option. Like, this is your toolbox. That said, when compared to open source, it still is running on somebody else's platform. It's somebody else's platform. It's somebody else's servers, and we have to face it, there is a level of control that you are still delegating to somebody else. It's a trade-off because now they're also taking care of a lot of security aspects of this. They're coming with a really great set of features like search engine optimization, bringing that to the table, really good content management as well. And pretty much all of the compliance features that you need are going to be available as apps or potentially some customizations across the board here. So software as a service really is that next level as you're looking to grow. Being able to then integrate it into a enterprise resource planner, ERP, for fulfillment and that sort of thing. So there's a lot there. It's more along the lines of a Ferrari as far as the capabilities, the power that it gives you. But again, the question is, do you need this level of capability? And that's where it comes back to your 3-year plan. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here. One of the other big benefits. Oh, you're going to say something, Ryan?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say one other big benefit of this is you can now run separate stores from one backend. This can be huge. So you might have a gun shop that you want to just expose some inventory regionally. Well, maybe your owner is this geek inventor and they create these other little parts on the side. Well, do you really want to run that through your regional gun shop, or do you want to spin up another targeted experience for customers, for better search engine optimization, and to really brand this thing out nicely. Well, with a software as a service, you can do that. Shopify is a little bit harder to do in this way, but it still is more or less the same package. You can spin up as many stores as you want in this space, all coming back to one backend, which then ties into your ERP if you wish to use one, or you can just, again, ship everything right out of that one backend. It does cost more than the point of sale, as Ryan was talking about. The point of sale, the gun specific area, it costs definitely more to run that. The good news is that until you get into the enterprise variants of these, the cost is still pretty reasonable. I mean, technically Shopify and BigCommerce started was about $30, $40 a month. Ridiculously reasonable. But of course, as you sell more, they're going to want to take a requisite piece of the pie. So, of course, the cost is going to go up as you sell more. Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, I always say that the SaaS platforms are the AR platform. It's an AR rifle, right? You've
That's
got
right.
anything and everything you want. You want to upgrade your barrel, you got it. You want a thermal optic, you got it. Everything is available.
That's right.
For the SaaS components, and it just makes things pretty straightforward with the pricing. I know Shopify, I like the way you say it takes a piece of the pie, and they really do. They look at how much money you're making, and then they want their cut. With BigCommerce, they do it a little bit different. It's all about how many sales you're physically making. So they do it by transaction volume. And so in the gun space, where the I don't want to say this, in the gun space where the physical transactions are very high dollar, but the margins are very small, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be on a platform that's taking a cut of the gross revenue. And that's exactly what's happening with Shopify, especially if you're trying to do B2B. And I'm not bashing on Shopify. It's a fact of the matter. That's why they're not good in the automotive space either. Again, because the transaction gross is high, and then they take their cut. So you end up with a larger cut being taken than you should. Where with BigCommerce, they don't care how much money is moving through the ecosystem. They care how many transactions are actually happening within the ecosystem.
That's right.
That's something to keep in mind.
It seems like something just on paper right now, but as you start running the numbers, it can make a very significant difference either way. And to be frank, I've seen some cases, not as much in this space, but I have seen some cases where the Shopify model actually makes more sense. So running those numbers, getting into it is really important. But like Brian was saying, it's probably going to work out better for BigCommerce in this type of an environment. So, but still, it's important to do the math on this.
Yep.
Third category here, Ryan, open source. What do you think?
Open source is an 80% lower. If we're gonna talk about SaaS,
Love that. Yeah, there you go.
That's AR right. Platform, right? This is a P80, and so that means security is up to you. It means that the full build is up to you. You better know how to use a mill, all those different things. So it suddenly becomes very complex. And if you do anything wrong, you've got a firearm in your hand that you've built yourself that could go boom. And the same goes for a website, right? If you build a Magento site or whatever site wrong because you're doing everything, you could have security failures. You could have issues where certain apps don't work with the website any longer because of an update that was made who knows where out in the ecosystem. And it's your responsibility to come in the morning, go, oh my God, my website's down, find out why, where, how, when, and then fix it. And so I think just at that area of complexity, you either need a big retainer with a developer, or you've got to have a significant technology resource internally. And I think that's going to be the biggest one there. But what are your thoughts?
I think that's that is well stated. I think the nice thing about open source is it's viewed as mine, right? I can literally take this website, I have Google Fiber here. So technically I could host a server, a website at my house and run a website off of this, right? So I'm not really subject to people deplatforming me. And so from that perspective, open source seems really, really attractive. The challenge is as well is I think the biggest issue from my perspective is the security. Again, it's the trade-off. So while it's really appealing from a deplatforming perspective, this whole security conversation is so critical. Especially with WooCommerce, we'll talk. I want to share something about. Well, I'll wait to talk about that at Magento when we specifically talk about Magento. But you own the security, the liability with this. Like you can't pass that off to someone else. And the biggest gap that I have seen with this is I'm a developer. And so I'm speaking from experience here. Us developers have this a challenge sometimes we call the shiny object syndrome, where we see a need, we're excited because you might say we're kind of inventors to a perspective. We go chase it, we build something, we solve that need. It is really exciting. We install it, we put it out into the wild. People are using it. Fantastic. Well, guess what? A new job opportunity opens somewhere else. We end up spending more time on that new job opportunity, and we forget about this module we installed. Well, the people that didn't forget about it is those wonderful souls in who knows where in the world that like to hack websites, that they're watching that. They see this was installed on 1,000 different websites, and they see a vulnerability that you as a developer missed. Now, it's easy to add vulnerabilities in as a developer. Like, you're not thinking about this or that, and you're distracted or whatever. There's a million different ways, like a car accident. I mean, there's a million different things that can happen. And so you don't know about this, but in the background, this bad actor is working on this to actively exploit it. And it was a perfectly good, well-intentioned developer that created it in the first place. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges with plugins, especially on the WooCommerce side, is this. Magento would still be somewhat the same way. Open source is not free.
Yeah.
So with that, let's get hyper specific. Let's dive into the details here as far as, given these 3-year goals, these 3-year decisions, we're sitting here in 2025, the beginning. What a way to open up the year, having this conversation. 2028, how do we want to close that year out? What are the goals there? And now let's map those back against the platform decision, because we want a platform that's going to help us accomplish those goals in the next 3 years. Whatever those goals are, that's what we need to be looking for. So, Ryan, what do you think here?
I think, the SaaS route is it's the Glock. It's the AR platform. You want to go out and you want to shoot, whether you're shooting at targets, whether you're shooting hogs down the road here in Texas, or you're going out to get a deer. It's going to do everything for you. And it's really, if you're making enough money that things start to get complex from a business standpoint, if you're having to call your CPA at the end of the year and go, man, I need help with my taxes, you probably should go to check out the SaaS platforms. And when I say SaaS platforms, I mean BigCommerce. I would still shy away from the political components of the Shopify ecosystem. But again, let's do an analysis for you. If you guys think that you're in a position that you are right for SaaS, give us a buzz, let us know, and we'll help you go through an analysis that can tell you where you need to be. But this slide says it real simple. You need an e-commerce platform, you need to satisfy security needs, and you're making more than $1 million. This is most likely the route that you need to go, barring some unforeseen circumstance that we see during the analysis.
Absolutely. That's well stated. And I think, again, under the 1 million yearly revenue, again, we're talking about online here, so not combining both offline and online. The 1 million mark in online revenue is a hurdle to cross. It takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into getting across this line, and money into getting across this line. And it's difficult to do, to be really honest, without a really quality marketing plan in place that has been tested to get to that 1 million mark. And of course, it's always going to be changing. But up until that point happens, the gun specific route is a fantastic route to go. We've had a lot of conversations where somebody in this range right here that we're talking about is thinking about going with Shopify or BigCommerce, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we end up usually telling them after having an analysis and having some detailed conversations with them is like, look, you're with Coreware, it works fine. And actually, Coreware is a cool conversation starter there because it does integrate with BigCommerce. They have a great integration. So, you start with Coreware, use their e-commerce component. Switching over to BigCommerce is going to be less of a hurdle in the long run, allowing you to keep all your back office software in place, which is a really cool combination right there. I digress. But being on a gun specific platform, get that started. Put your focus into the marketing aspects and the content aspects and getting down your social media game, which hopefully is improving now with some of these changes that Facebook is just now introducing as of literally last night, right? So make that your focus. And then once you are seeing that 1 million target within your sites, pun intended, then at that point is perhaps a good time to go up to software as a service.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out too that I know we're talking about these hard lines in the sand, $1 million of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're making 600 grand a year right now, and you know that your 3-year plan is to exceed $1 million, does that mean that I should go to SaaS now? Absolutely not. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Now, as your business complexity begins to grow because of the increased revenue, yeah, we should start looking that direction. But
That's
you
right.
made an excellent point that with something like a Coreware, you can start right where you are today, stay with Coreware, have all those integrations, have that network built around you. And then when you move to something like a BC, you've got that really easy experience of you're still going to keep your same payment provider because you can stay with CoreClear. You can keep your same POS if you've got that local store. And so all of the critical components of the in-store needs stay with you as you migrate up into SaaS. And so there are a lot of really cool technologies. Again, that's a whole nother webinar that we can get into. But if you feel like you're in that position, definitely reach out, let us know, and we'll help you navigate those waters.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's well put. I like that. And then Ryan, what about the open source conversation here? You already preceded that here a few minutes ago, but let's run back through that.
Yeah, I think, again, we're really talking about something, the only thing in my eyes that puts you in a position where you're going to need to go the Magento route is extremely complex business needs, business operation needs. It has nothing to do with how much money you're making. It has nothing to do with whether you're a manufacturer, a retailer, a reseller. To me, none of those things matter. What matters is that you are I'll use a really good example. Something like a Beretta. You are an international firearms manufacturer retailer who has multiple business units within. So they've got Beretta USA, they've got Beretta Germany, there's all these different businesses housed under the umbrella. So their business needs are extremely complex. They're using 3 ERPs. Last time I checked, it's been a while, so don't quote me on that one, but they're using a different ERP in every different country. And they've got Norma Ammunition. So it's not just Beretta that has multiple business units. Then there's another 27 or 8 companies, I think. Again, don't quote me on that, but it's a significant number of other companies that are owned under the Beretta umbrella. So their business needs become very complex. The integrations with multiple ERPs and having to keep inventories allocations, as well as manufacturing allocations. Do they need to order more bar stock and things of that nature? And everybody that's listening today is probably going, man, I'm nowhere. I'll never have those needs. You're absolutely right. You won't. And so does the capabilities of a system that ends up being more difficult to use and more expensive to use make sense? Not in my eyes, it doesn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're 100% right, Ryan, because, and that's why that complex features, I think, is such a key part of this. There is a lot of brands out there that are running 25 million, 100 million and more on software as a service. Like that's not like a cap, but what we find is that maybe in that 25 plus million range, there's some really complicated features that start coming in that, given the way software as a service is designed, it might make more sense, while you could build it with software as a service, to go with I would say, even more enterprise grade system that's fully open source. In other words, you can customize anything. So you can rip out a segment of the software and rebuild it. We're talking a lot of money to do that. So, and I think that's one of the biggest misnomers on the Magento side is it's viewed as open source. So just plug and play, and their marketing didn't do them any favors when they say, they have their extensions and just easy to drag and drop, install an extension. Well, that is a thing of the past. It is not the case. And so ultimately that can end up with a really difficult challenge as far as how one continues to evolve on a platform that's enterprise grade, but it's never been thought of as enterprise grade. So the resources and the investment were never made to keep it in the enterprise grade area, which creates a truckload of technical debt.
Yeah, technical debt that ties right into physical monetary debt too, because you're going to be spending 2 to 3% of revenue. And if you're making $25 million, that's a big number. It's a big number to just have your website up and running. But
that's right.
Again, if it's absolutely needed to have the creative capabilities, there's only one way to go, and that's with the open source. So again, it's one of those, let's do the analysis and figure out where you are today, where you want to go, and then make sure we're making the right recommendations.
Absolutely. As we wrap up on the final 10 minutes, we're going to present some recommendations based off of the conversation here. We're kind of summarizing it, but we're taking a look at it from a different perspective. So we're going to share whether software as a service is right for you, as well as open source is right. Now, you might say, why do we not say if gun specific is right? We're assuming that's like the foundational level. So you can consider it's right for everybody. But if you want or have these specific needs, and this is where the more nuanced conversation starts, then software as a service might be that, I hate to use the word upgrade, but another better word is not coming to mind, an upgrade for what you are looking to get. Again, with the upgrade means more investment. So it might not be worth it. It's just a matter of whether you need these specific things. So we've already set the backdrop based off of very specific recommendations, drawing a pseudo line in the sand, which is obviously movable given what your needs are, et cetera, of $1 million plus or minus as far as your target for yearly revenue. But we want to add some nuance into that to potentially give you some more context. So software as a service is right if you just need a more mature e-commerce offering. And that really ties into this second point. That's the umbrella point here. But if you need total control over the visitor experience, if you have some very exacting specifications as far as how the user is to interact with your website, chances are it's going to be very difficult to do that on a gun-specific platform. You might be able to sort of pull it off, but those are not designed for an e-commerce experience overall. They are first and foremost designed to sell guns and the compliance and some of those aspects that go around it. These software as a service platforms are designed for a visitor experience. I've also, and again, this ties into the third point here, where you want to own who works on your website. You want to own that decision, right? So with the gun-specific platforms, it is the company themselves. And to be honest, I've heard some frustrations about people wanting to do this or that, and it's not possible or it takes a long time to get done. Which, remember, the platform was never designed to do that in the first place. So trying to get customizations for something out of the box is just not designed for that type of a conversation, which it's nothing wrong in my opinion. It's just how it was designed. It's going out of the original course of design for those platforms. Software as a service does give you that capability, and it allows you to choose a friendly company like SwiftOtter that then is able to develop these type of applications or customizations to make it exactly what you want. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think the visitor experience puts it right. It hits the nail on the head, right? And it's one of those that we as people, shoppers, right, as e-commerce shoppers, we expect a very specific experience now with the Amazons of the world that have come in and taught us that things can happen in a really seamless way.
That's
I
right.
know that if I go to a website, I want to be able to, I love targeted marketing. I have to admit, if if I'm going to get marketing, I prefer for it to be something targeted. So I want to know that if I go to a website and I buy something, I'm going to get my tracking number in an email. I'm probably going to get
Hmm.
some sort of a coupon to come back. Or if I
That's right.
abandon my cart, which all of us have been in, sitting in the doctor's office waiting for our name to be called, shopping for something, your name gets called and you dip, and you're out, and then you kind of forget that you were in there, but you get that email a little bit later that says, hey, don't forget you were shopping for this. And
Hmm.
those are great things from a visitor experience perspective, but also as a store owner, knowing that all that's happening via automation in the background is something that's really key to making sales. And we can get into the analytics of, the delta that it makes. And it's, as you know, significant additional revenue happening in the background. But the other thing is, we expect to have a unique experience every time we visit a store. And that's just something from the marketing standpoint, and being
That's
able
right.
to utilize SaaS to change a banner every couple of days, to run a promotion every couple of days. And
Hmm.
it is really easy. And that's something that BigCommerce and Shopify have done really well.
Well stated. Well stated. Which, let's just dive in real quick to a couple of the differences between these two platforms. So, uh, BigCommerce, it has a really good feature set. Out of the box, it's easy to use, and it's a good platform. Their promotions engine is the best on the market that I've seen. And again, when you compare it to some of the gun specific platforms, you might say there's no comparison. There is, but like it's really far ahead of what you're going to. Some of these features are really far ahead of what you're going to find as far as capabilities on the gun specific side. Do you need to have this massive rules engine? Probably not. You can probably get away with what some of the gun specific have, but there might be eventually some cases that push you into saying, this is going to add a lot of value to our business and could then be a reason to select a software as a service side again for more of that the retailer side. Shopify, on the other hand, it by far has the best feature set on the market. No questions about it. And there's a tremendous appeal. They spent was I think over $1.5 billion in 2023 on research and development. So like researching and then building out these features in their system. To be honest, BigCommerce can't touch that. They've done really, really well with what their budget is. They're constantly shipping new features, but Shopify has it nailed. Like when it comes to the very best admin experience with the very best capabilities, that's Shopify.
Yeah, I think the only concern that I have with Shopify, you're 100% right. They are by
Mhm.
far the best platform as it relates to the technology itself.
That's right.
The problem that Shopify has is that there's a political structure,
Hmm.
there's that human structure that still exists behind the scenes. And I
That's
guess
right.
the easiest way to say it is to SHOT Show's coming up. BigCommerce has a booth. Shopify doesn't. Need I
Mhm.
say more?
Yeah. Yep, that's well put. That's well put. And yeah, Shopify has just not been historically friendly to it, and which leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths when it comes to that site. However, um, there are some people that are still moving there, and it's ultimately a merchant's decision. We're here to lay out the facts, what we see, and go from there. For the sake of time, I'm going to jump ahead, Ryan, to quickly talk about open source, and then we will wrap it up quickly. But so open source, number one reason if you need complete end-to-end ownership, this that's the case. If you need that ownership and you want to integrate complex features, expect that you are going to be spending a significant amount in ongoing maintenance. And if you don't expect to spend that, stay away from open source. That literally can be a real issue. And I think we try to sum it up here with Magento versus WooCommerce. Personally, I would recommend staying away from WooCommerce. I know Ryan has shared some of the same sentiment. It's a great way to start out. It bolts onto WordPress, so it's kind of a plug and play. Click, let's get started here. But as you see traction, it starts opening the doors for challenges, and security being the number one issue. The whole WordPress community has had some challenges right now with some leadership on the WordPress side, and they've shown that they're willing to do litigation in some of those conversations. So, as far as starting out from scratch, I would definitely suggest sticking with the gun specific route or considering software as a service. If you're already on WooCommerce, Stick with it. Maybe you'd be interested in the conversation for software as a service. I think you will really like what you see, and Ryan and I'd be happy to walk you through some of the features that you see, especially in BigCommerce, our go-to in that space as recommendation. But walk you through as far as the pros and cons. But WooCommerce it works. It's good. It just needs more investment than most people realize, and that's where those problems can start. With that, I said at the beginning, we would share a offer with you all. And that comes into this conversation. So e-commerce is one piece of the puzzle, and we've spent a whole hour talking about that. We can spend hours talking about some of these other pieces of the puzzle that we've already alluded to. There's payments, releasing quality content, good customer service, and of course the integration back into your ERP and making sure that orders are shipped properly or back orders are properly notified and customers receive these shipping confirmations. And so we have the big picture analysis that we have for you in this case. And the idea here is to understand where you're at, right? People like Ryan and our team at Swift Otter have a really big picture of what's going on in this industry. We talk to a lot of people. We see what works and what doesn't work. And the challenge for being a merchant in this space or any space is it's easy to get siloed. Like, what works for you, which is really critical. It's important to know what works for you, but we might be missing out on other things that are working for others that then can provide significant value to your business. And so this big picture analysis leverages the decades of experience that these teams have in working together. Normally, we would charge $2,500 for such a conversation. But in this case, as a result of watching this webinar and participating, and thank you for doing that, the price is free. We offer it for free. Try to have a really quick turnaround. We're going to put a link in the comments here as well, so that you can get in there or scan this QR code. I'm sure you all have a phone sitting on your desk somewhere. So scan the QR code, drop us a note there, and we will be happy to get started. So we're going to see you at SHOT Show. I know Ryan's going to be there. I will be there. And to wrap this up, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. I have Ryan's LinkedIn here as mine as well. And we're really stoked to be here with you. Thank you for taking the time to share this with us. I see, actually, somehow I missed a couple comments here during the conversation. So from Boss Man, Brandon Holloway, good to see you, man. ProSource, thank you for commenting. Appreciate it. Ryan, do you have any comments as we are looking to wrap this up?
No, I think I love the fact that the offer's out there. It's significant. It doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of time to get the data over to us that we need to run the analysis. So take advantage of that. And otherwise, we're going to be at SHOT Show. We'll make sure to get the booth numbers and everything out via LinkedIn and all the other social media methods. But come see us, swing by the booth, and we can have a conversation there and get the party started. But no, thank you for having me, and I hope this has been insightful for some of the people that are watching.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you joining, and look forward to talking with you all here, either virtually or hopefully in person at SHOT Show here coming up